All right, and new details continue to emerge about the event that really dramatically escalated that U.S.-Iran conflict, the Trump administration's assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, Iran's most powerful military leader. And much of that is laid out in a new New York Times piece from this weekend, reported in part by Ronen Bergman, who, along with writing for the Times, is author of Rise and Kill First, The Secret History of Israel's Targeted Assassinations. Ronen, let's just talk about what we've been hearing over the last few days, these constant conflicting messages over whether or not there was an imminent attack being planned, the intelligence behind that. Your reporting traces the planning that happened really for months leading up to this. What's your impression of that decision-making process?
Well, it's clear that the decision-making process, Nurit, was not done in a sort of a haste or as a one-time thought presented after by the president. That was after a one-time presentation of Soleimani as a target. The U.S. intelligence community and the intelligence apparatus that was built in order to trace down and kill Qasem Soleimani was built over 18 months. And the last process of approving, acquiring the operational capability, proving that it's possible to identify when he flies into Iraq, this is the territory where it was decided to kill him, and the ability to kill him, and then bring all of that to the chiefs of the intelligence, chief of CENTCOM and JSOC, and then to the president. This is a process that has been going through the last few months. As per the imminent danger that Soleimani presented to American targets or to American interests, I think that there's more question marks about that, whether Soleimani was just about to execute a horrific attack against American targets. But we need to bear in mind that the main reason why Soleimani was identified as a target was that his name as the coordinator, the initiator, the commander of many different operations against the U.S. popped up again and again since last May of 2019, as he is the overall commander of a campaign throughout the Middle East and the Persian Gulf to hit American targets, and targets belong to American allies, in order to pressure America and ease the sanctions. It was President Trump at the beginning who did not authorize America to take action, and if it did, then not to take responsibility. I think it was the killing of the American citizen in Iraq and then the siege over the embassy that changed the president's mind into ordering the attack and also taking a full and exclusive American responsibility shortly after it was verified that it was indeed the commander of the Al-Quds force that was killed in that convoy.
Right. Ronen, outside of Israel, it's hard to imagine any country that would more warmly welcome Soleimani's elimination than Saudi Arabia. But one of the things I found interesting in the New York Times article is it presented the view from Riyadh as being a little more, let's say, nuanced, even maybe a little ambiguous. What's your take on that?
My take is that both the Saudis and the Emiratis, the United Arab Emirates, rulers and chiefs of intelligence and military apparatuses are confused because they joined the front that President Trump created in order to confront Iran, together with Israel, together with the United States. And then, in a certain point, they felt that they do not have a backup from the United States. When President Trump called off the strike following the downing of the American drones by Iranian Air Force above international water, when President Trump did not initiate any kind of aggressive reaction to the Iranian bombing of the Aramco oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, all of that created the impression in these two countries that are vulnerable, that are weak militarily compared to Iran, that are neighboring Iran, of course, that have so much more to worry about from Iran than any other country, maybe except for Israel. That created the impression that the front is not that stable, that the American backup is not a given. These countries maybe try to find other channels to Iran and make sure that they are not attacked again, or attacked by Iranian forces for the first time by the UAE. So now Trump having a much harder stand against Iran and pushing that and attacking the most valuable Iranian operative, that sent confusing messages. And I think that what we heard from Saudi Arabia, what we hear from the UAE, is a line that basically trying to check what America is going to do. Is it going to continue with its sort of firm fist against Iran, or it's going to leave Saudi Arabia and the UAE alone, which is, you know, by itself a difficulty. I think that they're still trying to feel the American pulse. I'm not sure that they actually understand what President Trump is doing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's willing to bet money on guessing what the Trump administration is going to do next. But Ronen, let's talk a little bit bigger picture, because in Israel there has been this sort of decades-long debate really about how useful, how effective targeted assassinations are. It's something that Israel is well versed in and something that you've sort of written the definitive history of. What do you think the U.S. can maybe learn from Israel's experience?
Well, the Israeli experience is that I think when, and I'm putting the moral, legal, judicial, ethical difficulties and questions aside. They are, of course, very, very much important. But when you speak about effectiveness, the effectiveness of the use of targeted killing, does the world become a better place the next day? Then the Israeli experience shows that sometimes when you use that systematically, when you use targeted killing as a part of a strategy, when you use that against the target that I would say should die, not the ones that your intelligence agencies can kill, when you do that because your strategic need demands that and not because you want to satisfy some need at your local constituency, at your voters, to show your people that you do something, then these strategies do sometimes work. And Israel experience proved that. Now, the question is, of course, what would the United States do next? For the time being, it seems that the circle of action and reaction, of killing and retaliation about Soleimani has ended, thanks to very effective Swiss mediation, as my colleagues and myself at the New York Times reveal. But what would happen next if Iran or Iranian proxy bomb an American embassy, God forbid, tomorrow, as they did against Israel in the past in order to retaliate? What would happen if Iran reignite its nuclear military project and enrich uranium above 20%? Will the U.S. continue a more firm strategy, or will try to reach a deal? And as you said, Nurit, it's really hard to predict what the administration is going to do next. So if it's part of a policy, yes, it might get results. If it's not, and it was just one time in order to address a need to show that America is not humiliated by the siege over the embassy, then I think it's going to be a very difficult future for American allies, but also for the American forces in the Gulf.
All right, Ronen Bergman, thanks very much for that. One thing that is clear is that when an escalation like this happens, people